Firstly, I just wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for chatting with me today. And I just wanted to ask first how you are doing.
Pretty well, Andy. I'm in good spirits. I've got a single cell, so I've got out of a double cell, which was not very nice. Obviously, being locked up in a cell for 23 hours a day with another person. Yeah, I've just been cleaning the cell, cleaning the walls, putting all my cards up, organising my books and my paperwork, my legal paperwork, my education materials, my open university books. So I had some exercise today. I'm in good spirits, man.
That's good. That's good, man. And how are the staff treating you?
So this wing that I'm on is different to the wing that I was on before. This wing is, there seems to be, I mean, I've only been over here for a few days, but there seems to be some mental health support on here. I've had good support from a safer custody team. A certain officer was kind of going out of his way to try and look after me. That's been appreciated. There is a lot of IPPs on here who are years and years beyond tariff. So it's sad to see them in pain and suffering so much. But there is help on here, and we are getting supported. Yeah.
That's good. And why did you get a move to a single cell, and how was your old cellmate?
So when I got here into the prison, I made a mistake to let them put me into a double cell, but I didn't really kind of think too much about it, Addy, because I didn't think it would be for too long. But I came here during a lockdown, so I agreed to go into the double cell. They only put you in a single cell if you're high risk of hurting somebody. So you might have some history in your past where you've attacked someone or been violent or something, so they won't put you in a single cell. You might have arson, like setting fires and stuff in your history, they won't put you in a double cell. So they said I was dangerous to recall me indefinitely subject to the IPP license, but then when I got here they said I weren't dangerous, so I can go in a double cell, but that's just how it is. They make it up as they go along, don't they? So 1 minute they're saying I'm dangerous, the next minute they're saying I'm not. So that's how I ended up in the double cell. And then my cellmate it was very challenging. He's very young, he's doing a long sentence, he's in for drugs and firearms. It's just really difficult. He was very loud, snoring, very loud eater. Used to watch TV 24 hours a day. I'm not too fussed about TV. I like to read and write and meditate and just sit with myself and be still. And I've really been getting into a flow with the writing and digging really deep with the writing and reaching levels that I haven't reached before. So it's very empowering and it gives me freedom from my situation and frees my mind from all of the sort of intense emotions of the post-tariff IPP despair, the helplessness, the hopelessness. So trying to manage all them things and do all them things that keep me moving forward was very difficult in a double cell, 23 hours a day, locked up with this lad.
Yeah.
I tried to deal with it as well by helping him, like I helped him with his appeal. I wrote letters to barristers for his appeal, and I tried to encourage him to pursue it because our criminal justice system at the minute, nobody ever fights anything, they just accept it. If a barrister in a windowless room downstairs in a cramped courtroom in London says that you haven't got a good chance of appeal, everybody just accepts it when people shouldn't do that. They should fight for things. If everybody in the whole criminal justice system pleaded not guilty for crimes they were charged with, the privacy, and I feel a lot better already. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, when I heard that you got moved to a single cell, I was happy for you because I knew it was definitely something that you would prefer. What are the differences you see, Pepsi, between the Mount and Thames side?
So HMP Thameside is a private prison. It's run by an organisation called Serco. Initially, when I arrived at Thameside, I was very much impressed by the modern architecture. It's the most modern prison in Britain. I think it's about 6 or 7 years old. It was, it had these outside football pitches. It had computer systems in the cells, and it was impressive. And I initially praised the prison, and then sadly, as the weeks and weeks went by, I noticed some things in there that were just absolutely shocking. Basically, in a nutshell, HMP Thameside is riddled with endemic corruption. There's a lot of prison officers roaming around in packs there, abusing, bullying, psychologically torturing, and violently attacking 18, 19-year-old lads, mostly from London. It's very much unregulated there, and the abuse is just shocking, really. The things that I saw there before I left, I saw a group of private Serco HMP Thameside prison officers goading a vulnerable self-harmer into harming himself. And I used to watch him out the side of my door, where the nurses used to go in and tend to his self-harm injuries, and then the officers will be outside calling him a nutcase and a crank, and you have this like horrendous staff culture there. So this shows you that we can build the modern prisons with the greatest architecture and all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't resolve, and we can pump hundreds of millions into these projects, which the Ministry of Justice pay for using taxpayer money, but unfortunately it doesn't resolve the main problem, which is the entrenched endemic DNA. The DNA of these establishments is riddled with a culture of abuse, abusing teenagers, abusing children, and institutional racism as well. So that's the problem that needs to be solved, and it's a very deep and entrenched problem. And when you research even recent, let alone historical, widespread cases of systematic abuse against children and young offenders and vulnerable adults in prisons and hospitals in the United Kingdom, anybody who undertakes that research will conclude that even at this time in modern Britain in 2020, the United Kingdom is completely incapable of detaining those sent by the courts or those in medium or high secure hospitals with the dignity and respect that people detained deserve.
When you were at Thameside, did any of those guards try any of that stuff with you and trying to harass you?
Well, I started, they were doing a few things. They were refusing to give me my books. They stole 12 books. They defaced 5 of them and put them in the library and gave them to other prisoners. I started pursuing complaints against them, and eventually they just came in my cell at 8 in the morning with bags and told me I was leaving the prison, and they got rid of me. And they opened my door and they said, "This isn't the prison for you." So they left me, my toilet broke, it was full up with like urine because it wouldn't flush, and feces, and I was in the cell for 3 days, in the most modern prison in Britain with no electric, sitting there at night in the dark, no toilet, the cell, smelling of the toilet and that, and they just refused to fix it for days, leaving me there in the dark. Dinner used to get brought to you late at your door, they kick it in your cell. These are very subtle, dehumanising techniques that are being done, where they will put cold food outside your door and they'll open the door and kick it in, like a dog, like an animal. I mean, you don't even feed an animal like that, but that's kind of how they were feeding us there. The Serco Thameside prison was riddled with corruption in terms of prison officers bringing in drugs and supplying drugs there. And I'd even go as far as to say that prison officers were probably getting jobs there with Serco to just to make money and sell drugs. Obviously, since then I got moved to the Mount. So the Mount is a state prison. It's Her Majesty's prison, a government prison, a state prison. The policies and procedures here are much more rigid. Obviously, you always have problems in these HMP prisons, Her Majesty's prisons, the state prisons. But my experience since I've been here, especially in the last week or so, and initially when I got here, other than being in that double cell, you've got very professional officers here who will go out of their way and earn every penny of their money to uphold the mission statement and to try and help you. The problem is that they're so thin on the ground because thousands of HMP prison officers were cut by the Tory government. So the majority of the frontline officers that you see on the land have only been here for less than 2 years. So they're still learning and still being trained or learning on the job really. And then they're dealing with people with very complex mental health issues, very complex issues from damaged backgrounds, and it's quite sad really. But they're doing their best here. They're doing their best at the Mount. Since I've got here, things seem to be progressing a bit with my case and progressing with my recall and stuff like that. At Thameside, nothing was happening whatsoever. So I'm grateful to be here and to have a few prison officers around me that are helping me. And when I see bad things in prison, I'll always talk about it and I'll always report it and write about it and stuff like that and communicate it. But we have to give credit as well when we see good things as well. And I can't commend our prison officers enough who go out of their way to help me. Police officers in London get medals for tackling terrorists and stuff like that, and rightly so. So do firemen when they run up in tower blocks like Grenfell Tower and save children and stuff. But prison officers, the ones who are working really hard, they're kind of unsung heroes in society, and they don't get any credit, despite the fact that they're working in the most violent work conditions in Western Europe. So they do deserve some credit at times, and which they don't receive, which is a shame, really.
Yeah. And at Thameside, how was your roommate there? Or excuse me, your cellmate there?
Well, they threw me in a double. They threw me in a double on my own, and then within 2 days they put this dude in my cell. He was constantly smoking Black Mamba Spice, this highly potent psychoactive substance. He was smoking it in the cell. It used to make me go dizzy and stuff. I kept telling him to stop smoking it, and he wouldn't listen. Again, he wanted the TV on all the time. Yeah, it was just really tough, and I ended up just arguing with him. It was just an awful experience, and then eventually, long story short, he moved out the cell, and then they didn't. I was lucky enough for them not to put anybody in with me, and again, I just tried to deal with it with love and compassion. The laundryman shrunk all my t-shirts, so only like 3 of them fitted me in the end. So he was going out homeless, so when he went home, he was going home to Peckham in South London. I gave him four of my t-shirts because he was going home. You just try and deal with these immense, challenges in close quarters and these claustrophobic living conditions. You try and deal with them in a positive way with love and compassion, but it's not a fairy tale. This is prison where people die, where you can lose your life, where people commit suicide, where there is abuse and corruption and stuff like that, where you're around people who are very violent or can be very violent. You don't know anything about their background, anything about their history, and they just throw with anyone. It is a very, vulnerable situation to be in, but you try and deal with it.
Yeah.
You try and be as gracious as you can, as dignified as you can. But when you're trying to be compassionate and loving and helpful to these people, it can be seen as a weakness as well, and people will prey on it. People will prey on that, and then you can become you can kind of suppress things, and then you lose your assertiveness with people. You have to change to survive in here. You have to change. You have to find a voice. You have to find this, very assertive voice. You have to have a presence, and it's quite negative if you're just kind of a relaxed person who just tries to help people. So where I've come onto this new wing, I'm just keeping myself to myself, just focused on my writing, my reading, educating myself, trying to improve myself, trying to be the best version of myself every day, and just having that determination, Addy, and that commitment to not allow the injustice and the cruelty of this IPP sentence, which I got 14 years ago, to break me, or to allow it to destroy my mental health, or destroy my spirit, or to destroy me physically, which inevitably in most cases it does with people. It kind of breaks people, it breaks them spiritually, mentally, and then physically in that exact order. So the writing and the reading and the educating myself and replying to all the letters I get from all over the world, these are the things that just keep me moving forward and help me to maintain sound mind and a strong mind, and allow me to nurture my mind. Warrior's greatest weapon is his mind, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's really eloquently said, Pepsi, and just hearing that, I think, will provide a lot of inspiration and motivation to people, because I think a lot of people are feeling anxious and somewhat fearful about the pandemic situation we find ourselves in. So I think all of that is really helpful for people's mental and emotional state during a time like this. But as far as the pandemic goes, has the virus gotten into the prisons to a great extent at all?
Well, excuse me, the Ministry of Justice are keeping very tight-lipped about things. I'm hearing things from a range of different sources about numbers. I know 2 prison officers in H&P Pentonville unfortunately passed away because of the virus. I'm aware of a number of other officers who have as well. It might be as many as 5 or 6 now. I know that a number of prisoners have died, more than 10 in different prisons around the country. It's a very difficult situation for prison governors to deal with, because social distancing in prisons is impossible. So I would urge the British government to allow officers to be tested, because the prison officers are the best asset for the prisons, for the Ministry of Justice, and they need to be protected and kept safe. And if they're not testing them, then there's no way of knowing whether they're bringing it into the prisons. And so prison is a microcosm of society. So we can see that the COVID-19 is impacting the most as it is outside, because what's happening in here is representative of the wider spectrum. It's impacting the most vulnerable in society the most, like the autistic and special needs children, elderly people. So the elderly people in the prison here, and those with learning difficulties and things like that, people who struggle to express themselves and communicate their needs to the frontline prison officers, they're the ones who have been impacted the most by the prolonged isolation, the lockdown, and stuff like that. So prisons are when there's cases in the prisons, they're creating like isolation units, COVID-19 isolation units. They're keeping people in their cells 24 hours a day. They're making them wear a mask when they bring food to their door, and they're saying standard of back wall, standard of back wall, and then they're giving them their food. But prisoners were smashing their observation flaps where their mind was deteriorating with the prolonged isolation. Because they were being kept in a cell for 24 hours a day for up to between 7 and 14 days to see if their condition deteriorated or got better, and then if it deteriorated, they would then be transferred to hospital. The prisons all around the world have released prisoners because of COVID-19. There's been riots in Colombia, riots in Thailand, riots in Italy. Iran have let out thousands of prisoners. Canada have let out thousands of prisoners. Northern Ireland have let out a couple of hundred prisoners. But Britain, they're just refusing to let anybody out. It's kind of a shame, really, but it shows you sort of how politicized law and order is in our country. They just, despite the fact that we're in the middle of a national emergency, despite going over the peak now, we're sort of coming down from it. The Ministry of Justice won't release prisoners, and I said a couple of weeks ago, if the Ministry of Justice are going to think about letting prisoners out to safeguard vulnerable people and to protect the lives of prison officers, then they should let out pregnant women first from mother and baby units, and then women, and then children. That should be their focus. Obviously, those who haven't committed heinous crimes, those who can be managed in the community with electronic tagging and such like. But I'm not sure whether the Ministry of Justice have done that yet, or whether they're considering doing it.
Yeah, I agree, Pepsi. And are prisoners still flooding cells? Because I know you said that a few weeks ago that was happening.
Yeah, that was in Thameside. There was a big sort of population of youngsters, so they now mix 18 to 21-year-olds with adults in that private prison. So you had a lot of young teenagers in there who, a lot of them can't read or write, so they're in their cell for prolonged isolation, and they can't cope with the isolation because they don't have any sort of resources available to them as a person to relieve the boredom. So they were, smashing their cells in Thameside. They were flooding out the landing, banging their doors. But I'm not sure what it's like here. The unit I'm on now is, like I said, it's very calm. There's support on here. From what I've seen, the few days that I've been on here, it's very quiet at night time. There's no one kicking off or shouting or screaming or anything like that. There's quite a good kind of community spirit on here. Going back to what you said a moment ago about the lockdown outside, because people I speak to on the phone, they often mention the lockdown, and I hear people saying how tough it is. It's so unprecedented. Who'd have thought 2020 would be dealing with a global plague that would impact our freedoms so much. But when I write back to people and talk to people, I always say, there's no greater test for a person. There's rarely a greater test for a person than when faced with solitude. The human animal is not supposed to be on its own. We're social animals. So we need that love and belonging. So when we're faced with solitude, we have to face ourselves and confront ourselves, and it's very challenging and can be very difficult. But I always say to people, this is an opportunity. Embrace this opportunity. Embrace it. It's an opportunity to rigorously self-examine, to take stock, to think about your life, to reflect on your life, to think about the things that are important and not important, to learn something new about yourself, this is such a great opportunity to learn and to grow spiritually, psychologically, and then, you know, nothing lasts forever, it will pass, although COVID-19 is not going anywhere. There might be a second wave, a third wave, a fourth wave. It's a case of societies learning how to live with it, and world governments have to decide how best they're going to try and make that happen. But we will eventually get our freedoms back. We just have to learn to live with it. So yeah, I see this as an opportunity for people, you know.